Welcome along, everybody, to this is a week 4 of level 4, and hopefully the last time we meet under these conditions, because maybe next time it'll be level 3 if we do another one of these. How are we finding week 4? And I guess the thing this week is like probably talking a little bit about how plans are moving into level 3, and what changes you're seeing in the way that means that we work and that we work with our clients. Maybe someone would like to kick it off.
Yeah, I think I'll kick things off. I think last week was pretty challenging, right? I always said that week 3 was going to be the toughest week. I think from a personal perspective, just around the house, it was a pretty fractious household in the Vile household, but sort of felt like a long week and a bit of a struggle. But at the back end of the week, you look back on all the things that happened from a work perspective, and there's just so much positive stuff going on. And off the back of the call last week, we sort of talked about the 2 things that we wanted to carry forward, and that was actually true collaboration and kindness. And there was plenty of examples of that in some of the work that we were doing with clients and partners during the week last week. So overall, it was a pretty positive week. And I think that was sort of came to a head yesterday with the announcement that going into level 4 next week, although it's a little bit of a delay, I think that delay will help everyone get organised as we get into level 3, but also the certainty that it looks like we'll only be in level 3 for 2 weeks, I think was a huge relief for a lot of people, and can allow us to start actually thinking about what life is going to be like, getting back to some sense of normality.
Yeah, it's definitely a relief. It's definitely that sort of sense of seeing the end of the tunnel on the way. I mean, I think from a work point of view for us, we're not going to see a dramatic difference in terms of how we're running the office. We're still all working from home, and I guess preparing for what that level 2 will look like. So getting in place contact tracing, protocols in the office, and just managing having more people in and out, but we won't really see a dramatic change. It's our clients that are starting to see the changes and the opportunities for their business as we move down the alert level.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think when I spoke last week, I said I was excited about getting close to week 4. It wasn't a particularly exciting week, It was actually, as Nick said, it was a pretty tough week actually, I think, in isolation last week. And for us, I guess the next couple of weeks, in particular with moving down to level 3 next week, for us it's around trying to get what content we know we can start to get into production at level 3. So we're hearing that out of Australia next week they'll start resuming production on your Home and Aways and Your Neighbours and those types of shows. So we're obviously working really closely with SPP around what level 3 could look like for getting shows like Shortland Street back into production. Obviously managing all of the distancing that needs to be done. So we're working really closely to kind of hope that will happen next week. And then to touch on that kindness piece and that collaboration, I mean, it's right, as a television industry or body of Think TV, we've gone and created an ad that will go to air tonight. That's just a 15-second ad that says thank you to all of the brands and advertisers that have supported us through this time. And that's something that all the television networks will run across the next couple of weeks, just as a way to say thank you to those that have been here through the last few weeks. And so that kindness is really extended to everybody out there in the community. So I think there's lots of good, positive initiatives that I think we'll start to see as we come out of level 4 as well.
Hey Jody, how long do you think before Shortland Street that we see a coronavirus plot in there? Perhaps Dr. Warner has to operate using a Zoom meeting and getting people to cut with the scalpels and stuff. Just like if you want to throw that.
Tell you what, if anyone's got PPE gear, it's those guys, right? And and they don't have to change their get up too much to actually be following health and safety protocols.
Absolutely, the safest set in town.
Yeah, the safest set in town, yeah. I mean, we've even done test runs on how have you been paying attention done at home, right? So we can't bring anybody into a studio, but how do we do that live type environment? So all of that testing's been done. So hopefully next week we'll be ready to go.
Yeah, Peter, the return of Dr. Ropati as the call goes out for extra medical staff.
Yeah. Hey, and I've seen DDB's actually managed to put out a couple of TV commercials in the last week. So I guess there's no excuse with the lockdown now, eh? We're kind of showing that work can get made and get out the door.
Yeah, I think you have to really plan it though. I think everything takes twice as long. It's level 3, or as someone said to me yesterday, level 4 with takeaways. Is I still think there's going to be a real challenge in terms of the kinds of commercials you write. Because it's all very well having a set, but what are you going to have 3 people sitting on a couch?
Yeah.
So we've had a lot of discussions about what kind of work we can do going forward, and I think the other thing is going from level 3 to level 2. Because I think it's quite a fast. It could be quite a fast turnaround to level 2 as well. So things like supply chain management and a lot of our clients getting ready for I actually think this week is actually useful for a lot of clients to get back into the swing of things.
Yeah, there's other work that's been shot as well. I mean, Clem's got far be it from a mere media guy to come in on creative, but Clem's got out.
You're in a safe space, Nigel.
I was waiting for the virtual slap, but Clem's got out a nice piece of work for the COVID campaign itself over the weekend, which was shot in various locations, following all the protocols. Cliff Curtis voiced it. I thought that was a pretty good effort.
I think anything with a little bit of craft stands out right now, because I think there's a great piece of work I saw somebody put out in America, which showed all the American ads that they've made in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and they're almost exactly the same ad. Selfies, people working out in their lounge. So I think anybody who takes a little bit of time and puts a little bit of craft into it, they get rewarded, because their work will get noticed.
If you're a musician who writes sultry piano pieces, now is the time to cash in. Everyone needs you.
I only specialize in the uplifting piano at the end myself.
Nice, hard to do that in 15 seconds.
Things that sound like Coldplay.
I thought that montage altogether was quite a good ad. It was quite a coherent message. I think whoever did that editing job did quite a good job.
Yeah. So speaking of Coldplay, did anybody watch that One World concert or any of it on the weekend?
Oh yeah.
I thought that was a pretty monumental effort. That's what I was kind of alluding to about the COVID stuff. There was some chat about potentially doing something similar over here, but I think that was pretty cool.
I thought the Rolling Stones were pretty good. The Rolling Stones there was quite a good section.
They'd be in a high risk category as well, those guys, wouldn't they?
Must be hard to sing. Must be hard to sing with a ventilator. It's pretty scary stuff for them.
So I've noticed, it feels like now. I mean, we've been in this lockdown in a month. We've kind of got over the initial kind of scraping, just getting by. It's like now I think look, everyone's kind of looking forward and looking to getting things started again, and it's almost like there's no excuses now, really, isn't it? Clients are demanding are kind of we're all demanding more, and that we've all got to kind of step up and get so that we can hit the ground running. So you guys finding that the pace is increasing a lot?
I don't think the pace has stopped.
I found the beginning was frenetic, because I think everybody was just trying to do things. And
but it was all very stop-start, wasn't it? Whereas is it now that we're moving in towards more long-term, like putting more long-term stuff into place?
But I still think that it's frenetic in a different way, because you're still trying to get a lot of stuff done. I think what's interesting about this, though, is maybe what things will be like, on the other side in terms of media and, trying things. I've seen a lot of people that are almost doing their own TV programs, things like that. Maybe that will lead to some new stuff that we wouldn't have done 2 or 3 months ago.
I reckon the pace is very similar to what I'm finding, but it seems to be with a bit more purpose. I think before, it was just like a lot of tactics, and I think we spoke about it one of the earlier ones, which is like it felt like the tactics were calming down, and now the pace is actually just with purpose and aiming for something. So I think that feels even more so now, with a bit of an idea of when we might sort of get out, and you can actually plan. I think there's a bit more planning.
Yeah, we've gone from colouring in boxes and Media Land through spinning in circles and the corona vortex coming out the other side and, getting that momentum forward to your point, Jane, about actually having a bit of an eye on the prize and what that looks like and where that is and when it is and stuff like that. It's just, in case you're wondering, it's 5 o'clock on Tuesday morning at the drive-through at McDonald's.
I think you'll find it's at KFC.
Oh no, it's a takeaway fight off.
I just threw that one out there for you, Nikki.
We'll do one for dinner or one for lunch. I mean, honestly, that's going to be an outing, right? Let's just go and sit in the queue for an hour and get some fast food.
And then you can take some Pizza Hut on the end.
Might have to do some competitive research, Nikki.
I'm not going to ask any questions, but I'm involved every night on global calls, which probably a lot of you are as well. And we are so far ahead of most countries, right, with where we're going to go with COVID-19. And I'm listening to what you guys are talking about. I kind of feel like New Zealand and probably Australia are going to end up leading the world and the charge and coming out the other side. Do you guys think that's because we are actually holding the numbers back, and we've had a 4-week lockdown, and I'm talking to people initially who are, I'm not sure, I think they've stopped counting how many weeks they've been in this now, and they are not seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, and they're all starting to look at us and see what we are doing and some of the decisions we're going to start making over the next few weeks. So I think we've actually got almost like an extra importance on us as a country than what we normally have.
I think for the demand for the insight that they see from us, I think will be really evident, even from a local production perspective, we've had more queries than ever to access some of our local content, because we will come out of this faster as well. Therefore, we'll have more shows to be available on international markets. So it's already starting to be evident that that's what they're thinking in other countries. So no, it's really interesting.
Well, I think we're coherent in our response, and I think there's what could be really interesting is how many shoots get shot here from around the world, because I think we would be able to do it a long time before anybody else.
Yeah.
So I feel like this whole Trans-Tasman bubble is an interesting question, but I also think how are other places going to shoot for the next 6 months? And maybe New Zealand could become a hub for that.
Well, with a 2-week stand down, that's completely possible, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's pretty exciting.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's I was just watching it's terrifying to see all those protests happening in America where people are actually gathering in huge crowds. The protests are like, I think Dan makes a good point. I think there's the clarity of like message and being coherent kind of kept everyone in line. Then, and I think we spoke about one time how we all turned into like the most law-abiding citizens and knocks to tell on everyone.
So compliant, aren't we? Who would have known?
I know.
I find those American protests, the weird thing is in those crowds, you see a couple of people wearing masks. So it's like they kind of want a little bit bob each way, I want my freedom now, but just in case.
But right next to another guy with like an automatic rifle, like lighting a cigarette. And you're like, that just doesn't make sense.
Welcome to America.
Yeah.
And it makes it feel like that could go on for years.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like there's a coherent response.
No.
So, when does that end? Where it feels like there could be an ending.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a really interesting point about the idea that if New Zealand, if our market recovers faster and in better shape, that we actually, our bubble becomes, a hub, it becomes a big opportunity for people here, doing work for overseas, So it's
an optimistic way of thinking about things.
Yeah, well, you got it.
The much used word, the new normal, but it seems like the idea of what the new normal is seems to be morphing and changing shape every couple of days.
I do think it's unlikely. I think we keep thinking about going back to normal. A lot of people talk to me about that, but I'm not sure that's going to be a reality for quite a while.
Well, no, that's why they keep talking about the new normal and the reimagination phase, right? So, there's a whole bunch of opportunities, obviously, that we're identifying that are coming out the other side. Better ways of working, advantages, efficiencies, stuff that we hadn't thought of.
You get very clear and focused on what your priorities are. I think which is, I'm sure you're all experiencing that from your clients as well. As a business, you get really focused on what's important.
The only thing I'd say is presenting over some of these platforms is a bit like doing stand-up in Poland.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
it's a very strange process, and I think we might sell a lot less work if we keep doing this.
She's a tough crowd, eh? It's a tough crowd when facial features are that big.
Yeah.
But there'll definitely be a time and a place for online meetings. It'll just be, you know, not obviously significant meetings, but I think we'll have a lot less, you know, traveling back and forwards to weekly whips and things like that, because we don't actually need to.
Yeah.
So to Nigel's point, they'll just be kind of picking the good bits out of what we've experienced. But there's nothing. We've just gone through a pitch process, which was today, and that was really tough doing that from everyone's individual bubbles and trying to kind of have that cohesion, and you know, when you're under the pressure and the stress and you haven't kind of got the camaraderie of all being together, that's quite tough.
It's a chemistry piece. Although we talked about this last week, and I brought it up at our VUI, which is a virtual VUI, and one of the things that I've noticed is the breaking down of barriers, because we're all, you know, talking through a virtual forum, our bedrooms, whatever, in our t-shirts, etc. A lot of the barriers are broken down, and I'm finding it's actually creating a slightly more personal environment and connection. So there are some pluses to that as well. Not like super personal. When we were in Mel Taylor's bedroom the other day, Joe, personal highlight.
Tell everyone what you said, Nigel.
Yeah, personal highlight of lockdown.
I wonder if there'll be any kind of post Zoom kind of, when we first start having meetings around boardroom tables, where everyone instinctively just stares at their laptops and talks to their laptops. Oh, sorry. You know,
just as a little mirror to look at yourself.
Yeah, I don't look at any of you guys. I'm just checking myself out.
Well, how many people have been in a Zoom meeting, and while you're sitting doing this stuff, you're bringing out other stuff on your right across the checking emails and, you know, looking at funny things. I mean, I'm not doing it now. I'm
definitely not doing that now.
Yeah, no, never.
Yeah, I think that there'll be definitely a use for it, and I think, I mean, if from what I understand, like sort of the travel restrictions sort of, you know, stand, like sort of we won't be going overseas much, and so any sort of global stuff will be like this. But I think, as we all said last year, I think particularly in coming up with ideas, or, you know, sharing of ideas, you do miss a lot of the nuance and subtlety of like sort of looking, you know, like sort of feeling an idea, like sort of when it's presented to you in a room. And I think that's why presenting across these formats is quite tricky, because you don't really get a sense of people are emotionally connecting with.
Like, have you seen Shane? Have you seen like Bill Maher and those guys? You know, they're doing their talk shows but without crowds.
Yeah,
and they're terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, because there's just these weird gaps. It just doesn't work.
Well, yeah, I saw Ellen interviewing, I think David Spade, I think, and like it kind of felt like she didn't know when to laugh, like when his jokes were landing, because there weren't any cues. And I think it's the same as presenting ideas, and even presenting ideas just not even to rooms of clients, like internally, you know, like sort of like internal reviews, and like sort of just sometimes like sort of the subtleties are the things that really make the idea magic. Which I think is...
And it's just exhausting. I mean, spending a day staring at a screen and not just having the kind of human interaction and walking around. I mean, by the end of the day, you are wiped out. Like,
it's strange. It's such a strange feeling.
It's been hard to get our heads around that. What is it? It's the staring at the little boxes or something. It's more, it shouldn't, on paper, it shouldn't be more exhausting, but it is.
I think
it's a casual conversation. It's the casual conversation that you don't need to sit down at a time and sit there and concentrate and look at the person. It's that, you know, you're making a cup of tea together in the kitchen, and you get quite a lot of ideas coming by. You get to know your team more. This way, you've actually got to make conscious time, and you've got to think it through, and you've lost all that casual stuff that just happens as part of the course of the day. I think it's so much more concentrated each time.
I had someone suggest that it might be because we're just constantly performing because we're on TV, watching ourselves.
I think it's because we never get away from our computers, right?
Well, I think there's something to that, Shane. It's like a fake environment. You know, it's like you're on stage. Whereas I think when you present, often you're more comfortable. So I think it's just quite an uncomfortable. I mean, I'm an introvert, so I'm used to being uncomfortable. But I think for a lot of people, it's quite an uncomfortable feeling, like you're performing.
you don't normally see yourself when you present to clients. So that's quite challenging.
Yeah.
I prefer not to see myself, quite honestly.
I think the other thing that's kind of interesting is, what this does for things, the actual structure of advertising, networks, and kind of how this is all going to work in the next 2 years, where, there's not going to be a lot of collaboration in the old way. So I wonder what this will do to the actual fiber of advertising.
So why do you think we less collaboration, mate?
Well, I think it's more, and I mean, maybe I'm just talking more from a creative perspective, but there'll still be the meetings and the formality, but the actual bonds and relationships you make when you go to different agencies
and stuff.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting how formal the networks might become.
Yeah, but there's the counter side to that argument, I guess, is that times you actually find, like I'm finding with our network, you're actually forming some quite strong bonds with people from other, because it's a global thing. Everyone's in it together. I think there's kind of, and even there's in a New Zealand in this marketing industry, that we'll look back and laugh and chat about our old Zoom days during the lockdown, that we forged some kind of new relationships.
But I think there'll be, like Pete, be almost like a Cold War. So at the beginning, it's sort of fueled by the fact that we have this common purpose. But I think we'll reach this weird point where there's nothing. Do you know what I mean? There's no COVID really, but we can't still connect. So I think 3 or 4 months from now will be really interesting to see what it's like. Was that too deep?
Well, no, Damon, you were brought in to be light relief, mate, but you just, normally about this time of the interview, we'd be talking about espresso martinis, but...
sorry, I was being a Swedish existential film there for a second.
Jesus, that's deep. What does it even mean?
I think what'll happen, someone sent me a conference portal today that is in beta or whatever you call it, but it reminded me of, I don't know if anyone remembers Second Life, which was like you created like a virtual version of yourself, and you kind of like you were in a situation, so you can actually have these sort of virtual meetings, but as an avatar, like in these places. So it'll either become, to your point, like cold and corporate, or we'll just kind of go all Fortnite with it and like sort of make our own like sort of cool avatars and meet in some weird bar somewhere that isn't real.
Yeah, I didn't bomb your work. My avatar did.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I think we should do that anyway, no matter what. It sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, that's what all the kids are doing. So that's what all the kids are doing. So all the teenagers at an unnamed school on the North Shore are basically figured out how to shaft their teachers, like, by running avatars and running their voices through Siri or something, so that they can't determine who's like swearing in class.
Just drop them all in there, Nige.
Always opportunities.
No, not my kids, of course.
Of course.
They're angels.
Yeah.
So what with moving on, like projecting forward into the future, like when you start going back, who goes back to the office first? Is it a gradual return, or everyone, you wait till the dust is cleared totally, then everyone goes back? Or have you guys been thinking about how the re-officing process might work?
The re-entry process. We won't go back till level 2. So even though we're essential, we'll stay out of the building to leave that for the news and current affair guys. And then when we do go back, we're going to go back in staggered phases. So we've already got a plan around that, just to try and kind of balance that as we go back into the building. And funnily enough, everyone is actually a little bit hesitant, I think, about going back. So
right.
We've already had people that kind of go, can I keep working from home? So I think we'll have a little bit of that. So I don't expect the office, even at level 2, to be, fully operating as it was. I actually think it will be quite staggered for the next few months yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think
we're the same.
We'll do what we did before we went into level 3, where we basically rotated teams in and out through the week. So we'll be quite staggered through level 2. And I was talking to our China office, and they were saying that they, quite a few of the businesses over there, when they went to this sort of the next phase, they'd have 2 days in the office, staggered teams, and then no one in on Wednesday, and these offices were doing these sort of massive deep cleans. So the whole office was sanitized from top to bottom, which I was kind of go, well, it sounds great in theory, and I think psychologically it feels like it's a great thing to have done, but if someone was sick on Monday, waiting till Wednesday to sort it out probably isn't really going to make a difference. But there's some quite interesting sort of techniques that different offices have used.
I think that's the area. We've just sent out a note today to the team for everybody, please don't get too excited about the alert level 3. We're not all going to go running back to the office. Same as you, Jodie. We've got no plans till at least alert level 2, and then it will be staggered. I think helping them understand that we got into this very quickly, but the ride out the other side is going to be very considered, because we don't want to have to run back to it at all. And so we're building our businesses again. It's, took 4 weeks to get here. It's going to take more than 4 weeks to get back out the other side, right?
And you've kind of built this amazing sort of structure in a very short space of time.
Yeah.
It's sort of working reasonably well for most people, I think. So to like break that down and sort of have some people at the office might even not be as efficient.
Yeah. We like Nikki, or like all of you, will be going back in at level 2 as well, but we'd already preceded that before we got into lockdown as well. But we were approaching it slightly differently. So we had we did try and determine what were essential services to us that needed to be in the office, if you know what I mean. And so what I'm specifically talking about is super users. So all our data desk jockeys and stuff like that have got Uber computers, massive files, mega screens, working in NASA-like environments. Maybe a bit of a stretch. But those guys that really need to be there and domiciled in the office, they're the ones that we'd be more likely to let it first. And then also, because bear in mind that in advertising, we're not all there at once all day, 9 to 5, so we're now like yo-yos. So you can kind of like manage a few more in and out on a more staggered basis that way, around needs basis rather than kind of teams. It's kind of how we've been approaching it.
Yeah, we've got 2 camps pretty much. Those that are desperate to get back and have some socialisation, and those that are quite happy to continue working from home. But
I'm surprised, with same here. So I'm surprised how many people aren't in any hurry to go back.
Yeah,
quite interesting, isn't it? But same as just what Nigel was saying, we've had to prioritise those that are essential to the running of the business, that they will be the priority when we can get back in, and the others, we'll just continue working from home. And as we get into level 2, then maybe a 50-50 rotation, and then sort of really working through the myriad of work health and safety considerations that like marking out a spot in the kitchen where you've got to stand when you're making your lunch, and can you make your lunch, or do you bring your lunch in and you can only eat at your desk, and all those sorts of things. So we did leave the office very quickly, but it's taking a lot of planning to get everybody back in there.
At the risk of sounding like a large, let's face it, it's not the office that we're gagging to get back to, it's the viaduct or Ponsonby Road.
I tell you what, if you're at home with a 3 or a 6-year-old, the idea of going back to the office is super exciting.
Yeah. I thought the government's rollout plan would be that they would stagger it in order of people with kids at home get to go back first. That's essential workers.
Yeah, your house starts getting smaller and smaller, doesn't it?
What's the new rule on like sort of handshakes or high fives? Where we all landing on that?
the elbow. Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, my elbows. I've overdone it. My elbows got all crusty and.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Might
I'm
be the
also,
end of the handshake
weirdly
for it.
curious about what an agency smells like when it's been empty for 6 weeks as well. So not sure if I want to be first back in, maybe.
Smells like potential, Pete.
Smells like someone forgot to put something in the fridge.
Someone forgot to take something out of the fridge.
Out of fridge, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I think I saw a work colleague the other day, and I thought it would be a bit like coming back after the holidays when you haven't seen anyone, but you realise because you're actually interacting like this every day, it isn't like we've actually been apart, so there isn't going to be that big coming back to work reunion, oddly, if you've been FaceTiming every day with people. It's
I
actually.
don't know. I was walking up Mount Eden the other day and I ran into Scott Keddy and I felt like it was just the most exciting thing that had happened in about 3 weeks.
Yeah. Well, I ran into
A real person that I work with.
I ran into DT down on the beach the other day twice in the same week, and I was super excited to see him as well. You know, from UCD. DT, I don't know, you live around the corner from me.
Yeah.
It's going to
Hope
hang.
you keep your distance.
2 meters, mate. 2 meters.
Yeah.
Well, it feels like it's been a long time, but I'm actually surprised. If you'd said 4 weeks ago that everyone would be kind of in these kind of spirits and that it would have gone so fast, I would have been surprised. I actually feel like on a personal level, it hasn't been as bad as I thought. And on a work level, it's actually been kind of exciting. And it feels like talking to you guys, that everyone's pretty positive and up, and, it's like.
Yeah, I think it would have been way harder to do this without work in a strange
Oh,
way.
yeah.
Because I think the 4 weeks gives you a strange type of structure and it gives you something to do. I think if we'd had to just do this for 4 weeks without that, it would have been really difficult.
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure my husband would have survived if I didn't work all day.
I think because there are people, I know a few people who like sort of own an optometrist or a like cafe, and they have been just sitting like sort of with time to think. Like I think Damon's dead right. Like sort of as you said, we feel exhausted because we've been Zoom meeting all day, but like I think it's having that stuff to do gives you some sense of purpose.
And I think you also we've been laterally trying to solve problems. We've been trying to figure out how to do new stuff, which is kind of what we do most of the time. So I think this sort of, in a strange way, I've enjoyed having to figure out things, which maybe that helps as well.
Well, that's part of the challenge and the purpose, right? Is like, this is a bit of a curveball. It's quite satisfying to be able to crack it. It's just like anything else, I'm
amazed sometimes at the amount of steps I've actually done each day, because I obviously pace around the deck as I'm thinking, like some days it's actually pretty impressive.
I got to say, Glenn Dowie's must have some of the fittest people in the world. Every time I go, there seems to be hundreds and hundreds of people all exercising.
Yeah.
Except the teenagers that are all locked inside their houses playing, Xbox and stuff.
No, there's normally teenagers like sort of about a meter behind, so walking very slowly, sulking. At least in my bubble, there is.
Well, look, we'll probably wrap it up there, guys. Anyone got any want to leave us with any thoughts or funny anecdotes or stories before we go at all?
I'd just like to say that if possible, it's okay to have a Big Mac at 5 o'clock in the morning next Tuesday.
Are they going to be serving Big Macs in the morning? Is that Big Mac on the breakfast menu?
Don't know. But I have to
I have to admit, my kids are very excited. I'll cover both of your bases. My daughter wants KFC. My son wants McDonald's. So there you go. You've already got customers.
I think you'll be sure.
Bring it on, Jodie. Bring it on.
I'm loving it.
We should just keep doing this, Pete, even when we're at level 1.
Absolutely. I think we just every week we'll just Zoom these for years to come.
I'm sure that
we just do it in the same room though.
Yeah.
It should be one in the pub though, once we can actually get into the pub, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going to be a BYO though.
Oh, the opposite of social distancing.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Hey, well, look, stay safe, and we'll hopefully talk again next week under a level 3 conditions, a bit more looser. Wear something different. Shane, maybe trim the beard up. And
Nick, maybe grow one.
I wish I could, mate. I wish I could. I've been trying.
Thanks a lot, guys. See you soon.
Bye. See ya.
See you later.